Hey everyone, Isaac Puglia, founder of the GMAT strategy here. I'm very excited to introduce you to my student, Steven. Steven was struggling on his own with a bunch of low cost and free resources, ultimately leading him to a place where he was just very fed up with his lack of results. And that's when he found me. He ended up working with me directly. I introduced him to the study methods that we use at TGS and gave him coaching. And he was able to leverage that to go from a mid 600 score all the way up to the 99th percentile and leverage that to get into the one and only University of Chicago Booth School of Business. And we'll talk more about that in the interview, which will start in just a moment. If you're interested in getting the same type of coaching and the same type of study methods and the same type of results that Steven was able to get, I'll show you how you can get involved with that and get a little bit more information before you make a decision later after the interview. Talk to you soon. So thanks for coming on, man. This is awesome. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here.
Cool, man. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing professionally and the transition you're making with the MBA?
Yeah. So I grew up in St. Louis, went to like a pretty small college in Arkansas that no one's heard of. Studied economics, ended up working for Walmart and did like this finance rotational program with them, was there for about 3 years. They brought me out here to San Francisco, where I am now. And I joined a startup about 3 years ago. It's still in finance. So I've been in finance my whole career. And then I started to want to pursue the MBA. I started studying for the GMAT in Feb 2020. And the reason I wanted to do MBA was I wanted to be a professor for a long time. But I don't want to do that till I'm probably like 50, 60, kind of ready to retire. And I want to have real experience to give the students. So for a while, I thought I would do a master's in, say, like behavioral economics or something like that. And I didn't want to do an MBA. Like I did business undergrad. Like, what's the point, right? But I realized what an MBA will let me do is I can keep working at interesting companies, get to build really creative and fulfilling things. And then when I'm ready at 50 or 60 or whatever, then I can go teach. And I can use that MBA to teach, college students. So that was my kind of impetus for getting the MBA, as well as I know I don't want my boss's job. So I don't want to become like a CFO or director of finance, whatever. Like I want to get closer to the customer and closer to building things rather than just kind of advising the executives and the board on what to do. And so I'm hoping that the MBA will let me pivot into product management or something that's closer to the customer rather than just finance.
That sounds awesome. If you had to put your finger on it, how would you describe the problem you had prior to working together?
Sure, yeah. The GMAT score is unfortunately quite like a large driver. For whatever reason in the process, it's a very high hurdle to clear, and schools put quite a lot of emphasis on it, right or wrong. They just do. And what's good and bad about the GMAT is it's not just like a pass or fail, is there's a score attached to it. And so I got my CFA when I was at Walmart. And the nice thing about CFA is it's just pass or fail. It doesn't matter if you get 100% or 70, like as long as you pass, you're good to go. GMAT is not that at all. So my goal was to get into one of like the top 5 or top 10 schools. So long as I could do top 25, like that would have been good enough. Personally, I've heard that if you try to go much lower than that, it may not be worth the expense. Maybe if your company pays for it or something, but otherwise, like the network and jobs coming out of it, it needs to be from a top school. So that was like kind of the hurdle I was trying to clear and get into. I am not the type of person that takes classes for tests. I did not take any classes when I studied for CFA. I didn't think I needed a class for GMAT. And thankfully, my wife at the time, or my wife, I think girlfriend at the time, my wife was like, "You really should take a class." And thankfully, like she was very right, very well worth it, But she actually pushed me to take the class, which is how I found you guys and your program. Was through her. And like I said, I'm not normally the guy to take a class. Normally they seem kind of like expensive to me, not like worth the time? I'm like, what is this person going to teach me? Like very kind of, ego approach, whatever. Um, and so yeah, I guess I'd say that is like, the problem is the GMAT's very hard and you need a really good score to do it. And kind of how do you get there was what I was solving for.
Got it. Makes sense. So you were trying to figure it out on your own. You had some experience and some success with other exams, self-studying, didn't want to shell out for the class, but ended up kind of getting stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. So had your wife worked with us? Is that why you ended up going with us over someone else?
I don't know. She had not, but she had a lot of friends who did. So she had gone to Berkeley undergrad, grew up in SoCal, so kind of from the area. So she had known a number of friends that went through your program. And I don't know where they ended up, but they had all found it very helpful as well. So I said like, hey, this is like, I'll try this. I think you do have to figure out, I think you did figure out what works for you when you're studying for a test like this. Like my general method tends to be more like a brute force approach. And so like, for example, when I was studying for CFA, I had a friend who barely studied at all and would pass the test. And it was very frustrating because like that does not work for me.
Yeah.
I tend to be generally a good natural test taker, but still like, if I don't study for this test, I'm not going to pass. So for CFA, I spent like 250 to 300 hours for each test.
Wow.
Like just brute force, like get through it. So I took the same approach to GMAT, was like, let me just spend lots of time studying, figure out like what class works. For me, I just took the math portion of the program. And the reason for that was I felt pretty good about my reading and English skills. But I think folks need to figure out what works well. Whether that means like taking all the classes or taking one or the other, like play towards what makes sense for them. So I'm glad I did that.
Makes a ton of sense. Yeah, makes a ton of sense. I guess on that note, was there anything specific about like what I taught you that ended up really working for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Or that was like the kind of like the thing that was effective? Like I know it's reaching back a while now, but
yeah. I'd say two things specifically. Is one, knowing that I could skip questions was a huge stress relief.
Awesome.
To go, oh, this question's hard, I can skip it, great. Is for whatever reason, geometry is not easy for me. Or maybe I should say the opposite. Geometry is a part I really struggle with. And knowing that if a really complex geometry question comes up, I can skip it and still get the score that I want. I can do that. That was great. As well as number two is you told us to go back to the questions that we would miss and review those specifically and spend time understanding why we missed them, what it was, and then go and do similar questions. I did a lot of that. So one of the ways that I approach a test like a GMAT is to just do lots of practice questions. And it's easy to do the practice questions like, oh, I missed this, and just kind of forget about it. But you had told us to go back to that question, research it. It's usually on the internet somewhere. GMAT Club or someone has done that question, or I could reach out to you and get assistance on it. So to go back and look at each question that I missed, spend time with it, understand why I missed it, and then be able to get it the next time was, game changer.
You have no idea how happy that makes me to hear all that, man. Having gone through those basically exact same struggles myself, to be able to leverage those painful, terrible moments that I had studying and getting stuck for other people's benefit is just like, it just feels great. So talk to us about your results. So you implemented this stuff. What's been the outcome?
And so I started studying for GMAT in Feb 2020. And for me, it was a long process. I did not get the score I wanted until June 2021. So 18 months later. So I started studying in Feb 2020. I enrolled in your program in June 2020, and then took my first test October 2020. and I got a 690. And for me, that was like, I knew that was good enough for one of the top 25 schools. And if that's the best I can do, like fine, I'd be stoked. And I'd be really happy with that. I'd still probably try to apply to one of the top ones, but I maybe not would expect it. But I thought I could do better than that. So I took about 2 to 3 months off, enjoyed like Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever. And then in January 2021, started studying again. And so I studied about 6 months and then took it again in June 2021. And for me, I'm not the type that can just study like all day Saturday. My brain just doesn't let me do that. So I would get up, like study an hour in the morning, study an hour at night, but like put in the time knowing, like I said, like I have to brute force this thing. And so, and I went back through the material that we covered in class, reviewed a lot of the practice questions, practice tests you'd given us, and reviewed all of those little pieces. And then took it again, like I said, in June 2021 and got a 760 and never looked back again.
Sweet relief.
Yes. And then I think on the way, I called my wife first, obviously out the door, texted some friends. And then within 10 minutes, I think I'd emailed you and said like, I did it. I'm so stoked. Thank you. You know, could not have done this without you. So.
Yeah, I had the biggest smile on my face that day, man. Great job.
Thank you very much.
Of course. So, how has life changed since crushing the GMAT and getting it done?
Sure, it definitely gave me more confidence applying to my my like top desired schools. Is I knew that okay, at least it won't be my score that held me back. The application process is most definitely a black box. I applied to 4 schools. I applied to Stanford, Berkeley, U Chicago, and Northwestern Kellogg. And I got admitted to 1, Chicago Booth, waitlisted for 1, and didn't hear back from the other 2. So it's certainly a black box. You don't know what happens. But for me, knowing that I had a score that was above the average for the schools I was applying to, gave me a huge confidence boost. The schools are notoriously incredibly difficult to get into. Many of them have less than 15, sometimes 10, sometimes 5% acceptance rates. So it's very difficult. And obviously the score is not all of it, but having a top score at least lets the school know, oh, this person can keep up with the program. Like this person will not fail out. This person's dedicated and kind of keep up with what we have here. So for me, knowing that I had a test score that could be competitive was, like I said, huge confidence boost.
So happy to hear. And I think Booth is ranked #1 this year. So if you were going to get into one of them,
I normally say the rankings don't matter, like they're all made up. But this year I'm like, oh yeah, #1. The rankings were right this year.
You know, I've definitely done that in the past. Like the rankings don't matter until I'm #1.
Exactly. Finally did it right. You know.
Oh my goodness, man, that's amazing, dude. Well, huge congratulations. I mean, an unbelievable amount of blood, sweat, and tears goes into this stuff, and even out to the exam. So, huge congrats, man. That's so exciting.
Thank you.
So, let's just speculate briefly. Any idea where you would be right now if you and I hadn't ended up working together?
Oh, good question. I don't think I would have done as well. I think I can just say that. Do I think or at least it would have been perhaps longer and more painful. Like I said, it took 18 months. The tough thing is there is a timetable with school. School starts every fall. So and then even then, I think the application is the prior fall, then January, then April. So there is a very strict timetable, and if you miss it, you have to wait another year. And by then, like your life could change quite a lot. So sometimes the delay is helpful in that I initially was hoping to start school in fall 2021. So that's why I had started studying in 2020, and then didn't get the score I went in October, 2020, whatever. So in that case, like the delay was helpful for me, and now I'm starting now. But life changes, We have a baby on the way. Um, like,
Congrats.
thank you very much. Like, we could change jobs, like life changes, right? So
Mm.
it could have taken me maybe another year to get the score I wanted, and then maybe we would have been in a very different place, or we could have moved, or I couldn't leave my job, or whatever. So to get it done and get the score that I needed within, like I said, even a long window, still 18 months, but to get it within the window and be able to apply for the schools, and then get accepted to one. I think if I had not done the program, it may have taken me longer, or I may not even got the score that I wanted.
Mm.
Um, you know,
Mm. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I'm not sure why, but I think all the time about what would have happened if I just gave up, and like what
yeah,
my life would look like if I was just like, forget this, it's too hard. Because it took
yeah,
me about 2 to 3 times as long as I thought it was going to take me to get my score way back in the day. And it's just such a common thing because I think it just looks like any other test when you sit down to start studying for it. And you, like you
hmm
said, you brute force it. You're used to having success in the past. And then all of a sudden it's a wake up call when you're like, wait a minute, I'm
yeah,
missing something, like
yeah.
what am I missing? And I can 100% relate to that, for better or for worse. Um, so then just kind of to tie things off, I mean, if there's someone watching this and they're on the fence about working with me or working with us, what would
hmm
you say to that person?
Yeah. If you're on the fence, I would say you should do it. Is I was one of the biggest hurdles for me was cost.
Mm,
Is like I said, I don't like to pay more than say like a couple $100 for something.
yeah.
When I took the CFA, I went and bought books that were 3 or 4 years old because it's basically the same material and a quarter of the price. Like I look for deals everywhere I can.
Mm,
So for me to pay for a class that's more than that was like a big hurdle for me.
mm,
And the reality is, if something like this can make a difference, it is 100% worth it.
mm,
I was also similarly anxious about working with a consultant on some of my essays, and I am very confident the consultant made the difference. And if you are looking to spend, 100 to 200K anyway for grad school, another couple thousand for for a class or consultants or something that can really give you like that next bump is absolutely worth it.
mm,
The saddest thing would be to not do it and still spend a lot of time studying and then not get the score that you need and wonder like, could that have made the difference?
mm,
So if you're on the fence there, I would say absolutely do it. It's not going to be a waste of your time. It will be fun in the process, and you'll learn like lots of tips and tricks for that is absolutely worth it. And I would say the other great thing about the class is, if you're not the type that can motivate yourself easily to study, the class helps give you that extra push to actually get the material you need for the class, as well as get the studying time and that otherwise you might not be able to do. And it also gives you a good, I don't want to say excuse, but it gives you a good excuse to study and step away from things. Sorry, I can't go out tonight, I have class. If it's hard for you to make those excuses, then it gives you a just good, dedicated, structured time to do that.
mm, mm. I love that. That's awesome, man. Thanks again so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. And
Yeah,
huge congratulations, man. I can't wait to get that selfie of you with you on the cover of Forbes on the streets of Chicago or whatever in a few years.
absolutely.
Awesome, man.
Well, thank you, Isaac.
Yeah, of course. I hope you enjoyed what Stephen had to share. I really enjoyed talking with him. I always do. And if you're interested in learning more about the study methods I helped Stephen use and how we can leverage them for your success as well, all you have to do is book a free call with us. We'll jump on the phone with you. We'll talk about what's working in your studies. We'll talk about what's not working in your studies. And if it seems like we're a good fit to work together, we'll show you exactly what that looks like and you can decide to become a part of it or not. Either way, I hope you were as inspired by Stephen's results and what he's up to in his career as I am, and we hope to talk to you soon.